Welcome to Thought to Action, a program from Project Sentinel. I'm Chris Cordani, your host. Find out more about Project Sentinel on our website, projectsentinel.com. We're also on Facebook, X, LinkedIn, YouTube, Rumble, and all audio podcast outlets. We're looking at the world at war right now and issues involving our own defense on this edition of Thought to Action. With us, our Project Sentinel President, Lieutenant Colonel retired Tony Schaefer, Project Sentinel Chairman, Navy Captain retired Pete O'Brien, Project Sentinel Distinguished Fellow, Lieutenant Colonel British Army retired Tim Wilson, and Project Sentinel Senior Fellow Jay Homnick. Gentlemen, good morning, as if we're hoping it would be.
Hello.
It's always a good morning when we're on together.
That's true. Although we're going to be talking about the world at war right now, and we do have a couple of big ones, but there are a lot more other wars surrounding those in Israel and Ukraine. Some are diplomatic, some are by proxy, and others politically. Now, the Iran-backed Houthi group is attacking non-combatant vessels in the Red Sea. All this in a serious communication problem between the Department of Defense and the Biden administration. Oh boy. Let's go to the ground wars first, though. The Middle East perhaps has been a ticking time bomb in many ways, if I'm not far off, for quite a while. The Hamas attack against Israeli citizens on October 7th set off a series of events on the surface. We have the retaliation, but not long after, we saw some bad actors from around the region licking their chops over the fray. Maybe they wanted to join. Might part of this, though, gentlemen, be attributed to the U.S. not being perceived as a real military factor or threat anymore as either the prime or maybe at least a piece of this whole thing? Tony, let's start with you.
So I can't believe, Chris, you would question the fear in our enemies by the fact we have a man with an open gown sitting in a hospital room with a computer and hopefully having washed his hands after using his bedpan, launching ferocious attacks into the Houthi heartland. How can you question such a dominant warrior in such a vigorous and youthful position? I mean, Lloyd Austin, for goodness sake, he may even be wearing his Darth Vader style face mask. Who knows? I mean, that's frightening on the face of it, literally. I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of his face. I'm just saying on the face of it, he could be wearing a face mask. Who knows?
This could be worse. He could be wearing that Jason Voorhees face
this
mask.
This is literally Apocalypse Now meets Catch-22 meets Police Academy. That's what this is. And you could take elements of the plots and character profiles, put it all together, and you would have the complete and utter insanity of the Biden administration. So I at this point, if you believe the White House, you've got Lloyd Austin all kitted up, being a keyboard warrior. And again, I hope those keyboards are sanitized for his safety, since that bedpan stuff can get pretty dicey based on what I've heard about Joe Biden having to do. Just saying. So I don't know. Over to the maybe I'm being over the top here, but I don't think so.
Well, I'd just jump in and say that a week ago, our government and a number of the European governments sent a combined statement out to the world, drawing a red line for the Houthis not to attack non-combatant ships in and around the region. And on Tuesday, so 3 days ago from now, the Houthis launched their biggest attack in an age with drones and missiles against non-combatant ships. So the red line that was drawn by the Biden administration, once again, was not so much red as maybe light pink.
Oh, the line in the sand. That's a big one. It's I guess that draws back to the Obama administration's line in the sand. The thing is, though, we keep drawing these things, they keep crossing it. That makes us look like less of a threat. Pete, thoughts on that one?
Well, and listen close, because I'm not likely to say this a lot of times, but to give the Biden administration its due, they did conduct a series of strikes into Yemen last night. Something is always better than nothing, but if you're going to do something like this, having been involved in planning of this sort of thing in the past, what you'll get to all the time is you don't do it just once. You don't go in on if you will, Thursday night, strike a few targets and leave and say, okay, we're done. Because what that is going to tempt them to do, they need to now respond. They need to prove that they haven't been coward or kicked back or whatever, how you want to put it. They have to prove that they're still there. So by conducting a single night of strikes and not really hitting it really hard, what you're doing is you're really inviting more action. And it'd be interesting to see what my suspicion is. We'll have more action. If you ask me to put $20 on it in Las Vegas, I'd say before the weekend is out, we're going to see more attacks on ships by the Houthis. And I would add only that if you really want to do this right, this requires naval forces to go down there and do what naval forces do, which is conduct hard raids into a pirate sort of organization like this. You go in hard, you smack them hard. You after you've hit them for a while, you put the Marines ashore, you sweep through some of their terrain, and then you depart. And if they repeat, you repeat, and you keep repeating until they stop. We shouldn't be sending the army ashore. We don't want to go ashore. We don't want to occupy anything. We just need to make sure that they understand they're not allowed to do this. And as I said, my bet is we're going to see before the end of the weekend, before Monday morning, you're going to have seen a follow-on strike by the Houthis. And I would put it all in perspective. Start in 2021. Afghanistan is, if anyone want to pay attention to what's going on in Afghanistan, Afghanistan continues to demonstrate that they are just the Taliban organization, are just some awful people, and that situation continues to fester. But the signal that came out of that situation has contributed to a great deal of instability in the world. And in the last 2.5 years, what have we seen? Well, we've seen 6 coups in Africa. We've seen a civil war in Ethiopia. We've seen the war start in Ukraine. We've seen the Chinese pick up their ops tempo in the South China Sea. Things are happening here. None of them are good.
By the way, when you say we've seen 6 coups in Africa, no, we haven't seen them because the papers don't report on them.
Well, good point. Yeah,
That's true.
Well, the old mantra was, if we don't have an interest in it, we're not going to be involved. But the other thing is, well, we always want to be the world police. It all depends on these things. The fact is, these are also a factor too, Jay.
Yes, there's no question about it. But I just want to make a point about how these type of episodes affect military structure. And a little differently than in other departments in the government, because the military structure is very self-consciously designed to be top-down. You could do all kinds of analysis on why that is, but especially when you have the civilian leadership on top, you really need to have that culture of top-down, because the young guys feel like we're a strong, tough guy, but it has to be respected from the top down. And if you have a episode like this where the excuse for the president is that he didn't know, and the complaint about the president is that he didn't know, but he's supposed to know, so then the president is out to lunch, the Secretary of Defense is out to the bathroom, and the rest of the army is on their own. So that's a terrible internal impact, besides for signaling, just signaling within our own structure.
And what about the way Blinken has gone off to Israel to tell Netanyahu to back off in Gaza over and over? That relates as well, because that's, another one of those, exactly what Pete was talking about. Biden clearly is sending Blinken along to say, we want you to go in, punch them once and then step back, not deal them a lethal blow or discourage them completely from ever attacking Israel again.
I want to add this for the gentleman here, Tony, Pete, Jay, and of course you as well, Tim. What the Western world is doing, including, of course, Blinken and Biden and the entire administration here, what they're doing is essentially saying to Benjamin Netanyahu, all right, we're going to say that you have the right to defend yourselves. You can go in there, do what you want, but be careful. Um, and then when you're done, we want to see some Palestinian governance, a two-state solution, and we want you to give Gaza back after all this happens. And by the way, after that, we want you to fight on two fronts by giving the same Palestinians the West Bank.
Yeah.
So I think that the Rosetta Stone to make this all make sense. And there is something that will allow a tapestry of understanding to exist, is the fact that everything that the Biden White House is doing is based on the single premise of getting Biden reelected. Therefore, he's not going to go all in support Netanyahu because he would alienate the Hamas caucus within his own party. And they are very outspoken, and he feels obviously the propaganda that's been fed to the youth for a generation now, and their belief that the Palestinians are being essentially the victims of genocide, which it's not. Let me be very clear here. There's over 400 million Arabs. I think, Jay, what is there, like 9 million Israelis right now? So if you simply look at the numbers, it's not a genocide. So the fact that the Israelis are defending themselves is inconvenient to the fact that he has so many Jewish voters. And again, Jay and I have had this conversation both, virtually and in person. I don't get how Jews support any left-wing cause at this point, since the progressives have completely signed a board to support Hamas. I don't get it. I mean, I really don't get it. But my point being is that the Biden administration is trying to maintain essentially the loyalty of the progressive Jews, as well as the Hamas caucus, which is kind of like, okay, that's pretty insane. But that's why you see this duality of message. You're only going to see public expressions of support so strong for the Israelis, and you're going to see this constant call and demand for the Israelis to hold back and for a two-state solution. That's why you're seeing this essentially disunity of messaging within the context of what they're doing. And it's all focused on trying to get Biden to do, basically the Biden administration to do and say those things regarding the perception of the reality, not trying to actually help resolve any issues at this point.
Can I jump in there?
Israelis is that they like to do their own work, so they're happy to be. If you just give them time, they'll do the work. They don't need that much help except delivering material.
Absolutely. To add to that, though, the Austin thing also matters there, because the hypocrisy of Biden again is on display, and this is from Joe Biden, who claims to be a really strong leader, and his administration claim he's a really strong leader, and yet Austin committed, if you like, I don't know how to describe it. I'd call it almost a crime, in that by going missing,
it was a crime. He violated the law.
He disabled our nuclear defense posture for 3 days for selfish reasons, and Biden won't fire him. That's not a strong leader's answer.
Because, Tim, he's not going to fire a diversity hire. Look, let me be very blunt on this, since I know. No, I'm serious. I know Lloyd Austin.
Mm-hmm.
I worked for him. I was a major and he was a brigadier general. We were in combat together. I was the senior clandestine human intelligence guy for CGATF 121 for McChrystal, and I was still supporting JTF 121, which is McChrystal's task force, the tiered units, JSOC and all that, and then also task force CJTF 180, combined joint task force 180, which was Austin's command. And I've been in the room with the man multiple times. I've talked to him multiple times, and he was over promoted the moment he was promoted past colonel.
Yep.
The Peter principle kicked in.
There we go.
I'm just saying that the moment he put on that brigadier general star, I think he was out of his element, and it has nothing to do with the skin color. Some people are. Pete knows this too. Tim, you know this from the British military. Some people are their best destiny is left at the company or brigade level.
Yeah.
They should never be promoted beyond a certain level, because their skill set is just not valid. And you've seen admirals do that too, Pete. So.
In fact, Tony, I would tell you that the majority of the admirals and generals I've met of all stripes, all types, and tall, short, fat, thin. The majority of them are over promoted.
Yep.
That just is the way it is. If I can just add just something, I just wanted to throw this in. I know Jay wants to say something, but as far as this idea of genocide predicated upon the idea that there are, I think the latest number is 28,000, or am I wrong? 28,000 people killed in Gaza by the Israelis. That number is hooey, and I just want everybody to recognize it. That number is completely hooey. That number is being passed out by Hamas. It's propaganda. I would be surprised if that number is not at most half that. I would be surprised if they're over 10,000 killed. 10,000 killed is a tragedy,
Right.
but every death is a tragedy. But the fact of the matter is the Israelis are going into Gaza. They are giving notification when they're conducting strikes. They're dropping pamphlets. They're doing this before they go in. They're making sure that if you want to pay attention, you should know that there's a strike coming and you have time to leave.
They call people on their cell phone number.
Right.
They get out of the building.
Right. They are making every effort here to clear this place out of innocent people. And the reason why people are staying in large part is because Hamas is making them stay. But also they're lying about the numbers. It's a flat out lie about the numbers.
So I have to announce some breaking news. There is indeed a genocide going on, but it's in the White House and it's against the Depends undergarments. Apparently, they have been basically almost removed from the face of the earth by overuse by a certain president. Thank you for allowing me that public announcement.
I did see the Good Humor Man parked that in front as well. That's another story. I
think it's an important point with that stat that's being put out by the Hamas Board of Health.
Right.
So I'm asking a question: is there one picture in the entire 3 months of the conflict? Have we seen one picture of a Hamas Board of Health individual with a clipboard? I mean, no. What are you talking about? Where are they? How are they recording this?
Well, we're talking a lot about Hamas now, and we know what they're doing, and we know what they did, and we know what they're capable of at this point. But there are other players licking their chops over this as well. Hezbollah wants in, and we've been watching this. The thing is, though, and we talked about the Houthis, the thing is, Iran has been kind of controlling a lot of this from the background as well. And even the Biden administration has been saying this in public. They're saying Iran's responsible for the Houthi attacks. Iran's responsible for this, and this. Yet, apparently, I thought their administration was buddy with them after the $6 billion debacle we had with them.
Well, bear in mind as well that China has openly encouraged the Houthis and the Iranians and Hezbollah and the Hamas in all of this. They've openly encouraged them to do that, and yet what is our State Department or our president saying about that? The fact that they're openly siding with our enemies, and yet that gets no coverage in the press either.
Right.
Well, what's your analysis of why they're doing that?
Because the Chinese really want America distracted and the American military spread thin. I think that we are very likely at the moment to see from what's going on, and Pete can give you a better update than I can probably, but the threat to Taiwan is huge. The threat around the entire Chinese region is huge, and it may not be Taiwan in the end. The Vietnamese have got to be worried. The Philippines have got to be worried. I don't know where it ends. And I keep thinking to myself, the one distraction is that Taiwan is the obvious target. So where is the less obvious target?
Well, keep in mind another thing we have to say is another war that's being fought against us is an economic war. Mm-hmm. While our administration is paying attention to what's going on in Ukraine and trying to throw money that way and dealing with the Middle Eastern situation, and of course now we have the academia situation where we can talk about as well. China is looking at the idea that. And so is Russia, by the way, as part of a union trying to destroy the dollar as the world's major currency. And this is where the so-called BRICS nations are trying to put together its own gold-backed situation. China is enjoying the idea that we're not only tripping over ourselves, but spreading ourselves so thin that we might not even be able to recover from the next few trips.
Well, Chris, look, the Chinese, I think, ultimately are trying to dominate without destroying the economy, and I think the way they see to do that, my friend Blaine Holt and I've talked about this on Newsmax several times, is to do what they can. That is, the Chinese with others regarding via BRICS and other economic condominiums, if you will, to basically undermine the direction of Western banking, especially the petrodollar. The ultimate objective is to essentially defund us in a way that they do not destroy the means of production of most of the world, but is able to remove our ability to have essentially control of the global economy by the fact that the petrodollar, the US dollar, a fiat currency, is no longer that which is used for most transactions. So ultimately, I think that's what we're trying to do.
Well, Tony, respectfully, I've got some pretty good economists sort of that I've come to know over the last 20 years. If you look at the size of the Chinese economy compared with the American, and then you look at the petrodollar in particular, there's one big obstacle to all of that, which is that we have now know that we have in this country the resources to pretty much overwhelm the oil market. We are not tapping it at the moment. We're not tapping it at the moment, but these resources exist.
Right.
So if the petroleum guys, the Saudis, you will notice, have been very circumspect recently, and there's a good reason for that. They're aware that America potentially could deal a hell of a blow, and China's great weakness, as I've said many times, is the fact that they do not have access to large energy resources. They need them.
I don't disagree with your premise, but this is what they're counting on: is if Biden and the progressives remain in power, moving the country in the direction they're moving, it doesn't matter because those resources will not be used. The entire premise of the green economy, think about this, and it's linked. The entire premise of the green economy is to divest ourselves of hydrocarbon fuels, period.
But
they want to get us.
But more than that, Tony, the substitute are technologies which not only won't provide enough electricity, will raise the price of energy in the United States dramatically. But most of that technology is dependent upon products which we buy from China.
Right. Not only that, a lot of this technology will be reliant on rare earths. The Chinese Communist Party, if you will, is sinking its teeth in small African nations that are rich in these fields or in these minerals and other areas around the world, so they can monopolize or at least take a huge portion, or at least try to control a huge portion of that market. And then we're going to run ourselves into the ground in the West because we'll be again dependent on the Chinese Communist Party.
But Chris, think of all of those little kids in the Congo who get a job.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's right.
I forgot about
cobalt.
Let me just sound this note of caution that you're all being very pessimistic about this, and actually I'm not certain that there are quite so many things all in favor of China. Even on the rare earth thing, we're actually starting to see moves to open up rare earth mining in the US, and Australia has a lot, and the Australians are not friends to the Chinese.
No, I know.
Tim, that's all true, but the problem is the last time is, and I vividly recall this dance taking place in the 80s. There were a number of rare earth mines that were shut down just as they got going. They were shut down by ecology groups.
Friends of the Earth strike again.
Right.
So
sorry, go ahead.
What I want to say is, and Pete's bringing me to that point. Tim, are you aware that Germany energy production has fallen to 1978 levels?
Yeah.
That the countries, So that's what's on the menu for us. That's the intention.
Well, except
because
unlike
Germany does not lack available energy. They have tons of coal, and they decided to abandon nuclear. Nuclear is just fine, and yet
they
somehow
also And
But
they also,
let me finish because this meets Pete.
Sure.
This is Pete's point. They have so many folks who have inculcated their political system, who are these greenies, who somehow believe that
Yep.
CO2 is a poison, and it's not. It's plant
Yep.
food, and somehow moving their nation to a state one level above the 1890s is somehow going to benefit the earth. And I think they're going to have some tragic times coming up for their people, and I think
Yeah.
that's what the plan is for us.
I don't disagree with you again. The one thing I would say there is, as the immigrant, the legal immigrant here, naturalized and a very American about it, I have a huge amount of faith in middle America. That doesn't just mean the flyover states. It means the middle of the political spectrum and those with a lot of common sense.
Mhm.
And we're seeing pushbacks against exactly what you're talking about. We're seeing pushbacks against electric cars. We're seeing economic pushbacks against electric cars. We're seeing pushbacks against solar because solar panels are pretty dreadful. We're seeing wind farms being rejected and closed down by big business. All of that counts, Tony. And
It does,
like
but
I
it
say,
doesn't. So this is my problem with what you're saying, Tim. I agree with everything you're saying. The problem is this: the conservatives or practical people who are now protesting are going to protest just long enough to make it all stop. It all goes quiet, and nothing gets pushed back. Because what's going to happen in about a year and a half? All these efforts to reestablish a path towards green energy will come back. Our side never dismantles the mechanisms and programs of the left. These things, like right now with the whole budget discussion with Johnson, Speaker Johnson, 98% of what the left wants is still in the budget. What good does it do? Right
It doesn't
now,
matter.
Yeah.
Right.
regarding
Doesn't
your
matter.
issue, regarding what we're saying here, for the people to wake up. Yes, we've all recognized that. I'm running for office and I have certain views. We have other folks who are doing things, and it has nothing to do with the fact that despite what we're doing, the funding continues to flow from the federal government to all of these green causes with no abatement.
I've never seen a tax rescinded, that's for sure, in my lifetime, and I don't think anybody has for many generations.
Oh, you bring up a good point, Tony. I want to throw this to everybody all around before we wind down the program. There has been backlash also on the grassroots front, where we see voters responding to all these things that are happening. We have the election in Argentina. We have Geert Wilders' victory. We have expected great showings by the right-leaning parties in France, under Marine Le Pen's leadership, and of course in Italy. And we're probably going to see a lot more of this reaction. But you're right, Tony. What good is all this if, like what happened in the U.S. between 2016 and 2019, and in Brazil after the right took over there, and didn't really do as much as they probably should have? I mean, did the center right and the slightly farther right learn their lesson for the next time they gain power, or is it going to be more of the same? That's a good question, gentlemen. What do you think?
I'll just jump in once again and say, my real topic is the Second Amendment. And people talk about the fact that the murder rate has been dropping and has dropped successfully. Do you realize that the biggest drop in the murder rate came about when we moved from 4 states with constitutional carry? Over the last 5 years, we've moved to 27 states with constitutional carry, and the murder rate across the nation has dropped. What a surprise. Common sense is there, and it is being pushed. So I'm not willing to be as pessimistic as others about where we're headed.
But remember, Thomas Sowell wrote a whole book where he showed that once the left gets their premise into government and government operates on that premise,
Yep.
then all the evidence against it is never interpreted as undermining the premise. It just means you need more money. If you give more money to the premise, it'll eventually have its impact.
Yeah, throw money at the fire and it'll burn louder.
And the issue here is that is that the bureaucracy, this vast machinery of government, doesn't change with the presidency. And in fact, one of the accusations made against Trump is so patently ridiculous that he was undermining the government. The fact of the matter was the government was undermining him. The bureaucracy was undermining him. He has, as the president, every president has very specific authorities, and yet the bureaucracy spent 4 years undermining his authorities, and that ability of the bureaucracy, which is far left of center, the bureaucracy itself, the people who inhabit the bureaucracy are far left of the mainstream of the population. They undermined his efforts, and they remain in place. And as long as you cannot change those regulations, cannot undermine the machinations of these various offices inside the government, which are outside, really, in many respects, the Constitution. As long as you can't get them to roll things backwards, you can't change things. And those organizations have their own life of their own. As Ronald Reagan's great comment about the only thing on this earth that's immortal is a federal program. The fact of the matter is, it's very difficult to turn those agencies around and get them pointed in the other direction.
And by the way, this is a very important point, which is that there were a few agencies where Trump made a bigger impact than others because he got a couple of good guys and a few key agencies. And this a guy I knew in Interior who accomplished a lot, but there was several agencies where he was able to move the ball because he had the right people. However, he had a terrible search team to start his administration.
Right.
They said, send in your application to DC. That was a horrible way to go about it.
Uh-huh.
And so it's extremely important for them to have that team in place. I know there's some think tanks that are trying to set up, a fake parallel application system where you can apply right now theoretically for jobs, send them resumes, and they'll have it, and they're hoping they'll get Trump to take their resumes right away. But I think this is going to be the most important issue. Whichever Republican becomes president next has to come in with a really broad team of guys with talents across a lot of these areas and hit all these agencies very hard with people who are pushing the other direction.
Trump needs to re-campaign on drain the swamp. That's what we're all saying.
I don't want to drain it. I want to fill it up with good creatures that know how to eat
clean water. Yeah,
No,
drain it and fill it with clean water.
Drain it.
No.
Get rid
I'm
of it.
sorry. I think the scene from Apocalypse Now where they basically napalm the tree line is where we ought to start. I think that's the first answer.
I hear you love the smell of that stuff, Tony.
That's right. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. I love the smell of burning bureaucrats in the morning. That ozone smell.
You do bring up something that's very important too. What Trump did not do was fire enough of the infrastructure that was filled with the rotting moles who tried to sabotage what was going on as well. The next president, and of course the other Western nations have to follow suit on this too. Bring good people in there. Get rid of the people who are so entrenched in that proverbial swamp that they're going to try to re-swampify it, if you will, for lack of a better term. They're going to go against your clean water.
Chris, the difference between the European nations and here is Trump may come in. If Trump wins, he still needs Congress to support him in doing it. If he doesn't have Congress supporting him, and he never had the whole of Congress behind him,
but he
can't
can
clean up the swamp.
He can get rid of the Eric the Charming fellas and the Vindmans that are inside,
but he can't
that are working, that are digging from there.
Defund the various departments, which is what you need for a major clean out of the swamp.
Absolutely.
Well, you could just put an axe to it like Malay's doing, but that's a different story.
Well, no, I mean,
this
is where I think a House of Representatives, you don't need the Senate necessarily, although the Senate would help. I think he needs the House, to your point, Tim, because all budgetary documents have to originate in the House. You cannot have it originate in the Senate. And the House can do things as long as they hold the line. And this is where my frustration is, Johnson again caving on this budget. We are literally spending 2.5 times more than appropriated dollars are covering, literally. And I at this point, I was on with Judge Napolitano yesterday. And I said, at this point, we should actually sue the government to basically remove all individual taxation because they don't need it. Literally, it's a harassment to citizens because they don't care about what we give or not give. It simply drains our resources for no good because they're going to write the check and they're going to do whatever they want, no matter what the restrictions are, because there's no restrictions as far as they're concerned. So,
well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this discussion. And we're resurrecting and we're bringing back thought to action on a regular basis here with Project Sentinel. Find more out about us at Project Sentinel on our website, projectsentinel.com. Follow us on Facebook, X. Yes, it's X now, not Twitter. LinkedIn. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, and all audio podcast outlets. Again, I'm Chris Cordani. Thanks to all of you for watching and or listening to us. And once again, stay informed.